Happy Wednesday, everybody. We're halfway home on another week, and thanks for joining us for another edition of the Brandon Warne poorly produced podcast project. Episode number 7 is going to be entitled The Price is Right. And it has nothing to do with Bob Barker or Drew Carey or any of the ladies in dresses that show you that you're going to win a new car. But actually, since this is kind of a daily podcast, hasn't quite been every single day so far, but we're trying to be as consistent as possible. I've reached out and asked people to give me ideas for what they'd like to hear me talk about, which I suppose is probably kind of vain, but at the same time, how else am I going to get good ideas? Because I can't come up with good ideas on my own. But anyway, on Facebook, maybe about a week ago, maybe a little longer than that, a friend of mine named Adam Preuss, that's Price, Preuss, so Facebook and Twitter friend, had posted a few things on my Facebook wall that he wanted me to talk about, and he actually has, I think, 6, 7, 8 different things here that are pretty solid. And Price, by definition, is not a huge baseball guy. I know he likes the WWE, and I think he's a pretty big Timberwolves fan. But all in all, a good guy, and we go all the way back to old days at Pro Sports Daily, a forum that I kind of got some of my formative knowledge at to get me to where I am today, which, in the eyes of some people, isn't very far, I guess. But anyway, here is sort of the things he's asking, and I'm just going to try to pick them off one by one, and then address a couple of the other questions that I got that day, and let's see how many we can get to in 15 minutes. Now 13 minutes that we have left here. The first question Adam asks is Bill Smith the only person responsible for the mess that the Twins are in? And no, I don't. Honestly, I think it's a multifaceted, multi-layered thing where the entire organization has to shoulder the blame. The bad trades that were made, and it's not just Bill Smith who made bad trades, certainly play a role in it. But when I broke down the organization in that big post that I wrote last Friday, or the Friday before the season ended, I posted it. It kind of goes back to bad drafting, bad personnel decisions, bad decisions across the organization that all kind of added up to a situation where the Twins didn't have the depth to overcome the problems that both plagued it on the injury front, which is Justin Morneau, even Joe Mauer, but also the problems that you kind of bring upon yourself, like for some reason deciding you need to get faster by getting rid of one of the best defensive shortstops in the game, whether it was because he was too expensive, whether it was because he was too slow, whether it was because he didn't play when he wasn't 100%. Whatever the reason was for getting rid of J.J. Hardy was the wrong reason. Unless there's something that the Twins aren't telling everybody about that was a huge issue, but apparently it hasn't reared up in Baltimore, as he's been, by all accounts, a model citizen. But anyway, no, you can't really blame Bill Smith. I think you have to give some of the blame to Terry Ryan, some of it to anybody else, scouts, personnel evaluators who have advised them to make some of the decisions they have. Now, all those problems, all those issues really center on a previous era or a previous time in Twins history. And I think where the Twins are right now and the moves they've made in the last 3 or 4 years are generally, anything post-Hardy has been generally positive. Now, people can say, well, why'd you give 2 years to Mike Pelfrey? 2-year deals, 1-year deals with Correa, Pelfrey, whatever, by definition, can't really be bad moves in the sense that they're really only placeholders, and you can't necessarily fill in those spots with guys like Irvin Santana, who flat out told the Twins no, he didn't want to come play for the Twins. And so guys have to fill those innings. Now, you could argue, bring up young guys, bring up organization fillers, and just throw them at the wall. Why not let Anthony Swarzak start 35 games last year instead of Kevin Correa? By last year, I mean 2013, not 2014. I don't have a good answer for that. I honestly don't. But at the same time, I can recognize and I can understand that I'm far enough from the situation that there must be a reason that maybe I don't understand that. But this kind of circling the wagon of me saying, no, Bill Smith isn't the only person responsible, but I think he's front and center as one of the biggest ones. The next question Adam asks is there any chance Molitor, Steinbach, and Doug Minkiewicz all get spots on the staff? While I wouldn't rule that out, I do think there is something to be said about other managerial candidates on your staff next year. I think it's part of the reason why Ron Gardenhire initially resisted having Paul Molitor on his staff, or maybe Paul Molitor resisted being on the staff, was they didn't want the guy generally assumed to be the heir apparent to be basically standing behind his shoulder and looking over it. Now, hiring a new manager doesn't necessarily mean that they're hiring someone with someone else in mind for the future. So to that end, yeah, maybe you could, but I don't know that the Twins would also want to pull the rug out from the minor leagues and take Minkiewicz out of a spot where he's obviously been very successful, but also where he can continue to grow and again, maybe possibly be that manager of the future, whether the Twins would publicly or privately admit it or not. Now, creating holes like that means you got to find somebody else to fill in underneath it. That's a problem that you'd gladly address if you think it makes your big league team better. But I don't know. I don't know that the odds of that are very high because it just. How do I put this? I don't think. If they could all be bench coaches, it makes sense. But you need to hire a hitting coach. Minkiewicz could maybe be the first base coach. Maybe he could do something with infielders. But is that a step up from having the full reins at Fort Myers? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Next question that he asks is, looking back at the number of former Twins given up on and let go, is there any chance the culture will ever change? Well, the thing is, a number of the players that were let go for whatever reason, you have to remember that when they were let go, fans hardly put up a fight. And Seth Stos reminds me of this constantly, and I thank him for that. When David Ortiz was let go, people weren't going nuts about it. Now, is that because it wasn't a part of the Facebook, Twitter age? Yeah, maybe. That might be a big part of the situation. But at the same time, it wasn't a big fuss made about Ortiz being let go. Francisco Liriano had basically reached the end of his rope with the Twins, and the Twins even tried to bring him back at the end of that year as a free agent anyway. Kyle Loesch, nobody was crying over him going elsewhere. It was like basically J.J. Hardy gone that people were upset about. Carlos Gomez, people basically said good riddance, and he stunk for a long time with the Brewers too before he basically decided, look, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to be successful, can you please let me try this? And Milwaukee basically let him do it. So I do think there does need to be a culture change, and I'm not sure how you do that, whether... What you have to avoid doing is trying to manufacture culture change at the expense of getting legitimately better. Which is to say, if you have the opportunity to sign a culture guy like Torrey Hunter this offseason, or a player who can legitimately make you better for the same or similar number of dollars, that's a tough decision. I don't think you want to go with the culture guy, because the Twins could have done that with A.J. Przinsky this last offseason too. And who knows, with what he did or with what he reportedly did to that Boston Red Sox clubhouse, that could have blown this Twins house, the doors clear off the hinges. So you have to be careful. Same thing for Michael Kadire, who I think will still end up back with the Rockies, is that culture is one thing, but you need to create a culture. You can't really purchase a culture. Now, guys like Torrey Hunter coming up through the system have that personality that people gravitate to. And it's not something he was taught. It's something, maybe he observed it as a young player from maybe a Kirby Puckett or something, but at the same time, you can't force that culture. You can't create that culture out of scratch. It has to be something that's kind of fostered and developed, and the Twins need to find a way to get back to that. Next, being that every division has its perennial loser, are the Royals for real? How long before they go back in the basement? And if not for a while, are the Twins locked in the basement? I think the Royals are for real, and I think that even if or when they let James Shields go, they're not going to experience that big of a drop-off. And I know that's unpopular, and I know it sounds crazy, but at the same time, I really like Danny Duffy, I really like Giordano Ventura, and I think they'll find guys bring up and piece it together. They can go sign another fly ball pitcher and let that outfield defense go to work like it has for Jason Vargas this year, and like it has for the rest of that staff. And the infield defense is fantastic too. They play good defense. They have a pretty good offense. I know that a lot of people don't like that offense, or a lot of people are not positive or high on that offense. But I think it's a solid offense, and they can pitch, and that bullpen is lights out. So I don't know that anybody's locked in the basement. I think this entire division, and this is something I'll podcast or write on in the next couple of weeks, this entire division might be a division separated by 10 games in the near future, where the winner wins 88 and the number 5 team wins 78, and everybody's structured right in the middle of that. So being in the basement of the AL Central might not be a big deal here in the near future. Next question, is there any idea who would be an ideal candidate to replace Terry Ryan? Honestly, I think the best way to go with what people would expect there is to find somebody from a model organization and lure them over, whether that's the Cardinals, the Tampa Bay Rays, even the Baltimore Orioles with the way they've conducted business over the last couple of years. And it's encouraging when you look at the managerial front that the Twins have brought in or looked at somebody from the Orioles, which is John Russell, the Red Sox, who for all their faults are still a pretty well-run organization in Torey Lovullo, and then the A's with Chip Hale, and who wouldn't want to run like the A's? Now, would it be nice to see the Twins look at somebody from Tampa Bay, maybe a Dave Martinez? Yeah, and that would kind of complete the four-way deal there of interviewing guys from teams that have been successful, and maybe somebody from St. Louis too. But at the same time, you need to understand that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to bring the philosophies and theories over. Now, back to Terry Ryan, that's again assuming he steps down or gets fired, which I don't know is very likely. I don't know. I had previously believed he might be a year behind Ron Gardenhire, but I still think he's a little closer to the poll ads than most people believe, and I think he's probably safe for as long as he wants to keep going, health willing. And so it's hard to really answer that question without diving into the managerial search since it's ongoing. Next question is, why does everyone say the Twins can't attract free agents? The best ballpark, which is arguable, but it's a very good ballpark, a good farm system, decent fans. The tough sell is coming to play for a team that hasn't been winning. Now, some players want to go to a team that hasn't been winning and be a part of turning that culture around. Some people just want to be on the coasts. A lot of great players are from California, Florida, or not from America at all, and so they don't really know much about the Midwest or even really like the Midwest. It's chilly in the spring, it's chilly in the fall. Most of these guys don't live here in the winter, so I don't think that really matters a whole lot. But I think that it's just that the Midwest maybe isn't something they hate, but it just falls third after both the coasts, where the Twins just aren't really that attractive of a destination right now. Now, if they start winning, maybe they'll be again, and the ballpark should be a good selling point for pitchers especially. But we haven't seen that yet outside of Ricky Nolasco and Phil Hughes, which is +1 and -1 when you look at it. We got about a minute and a half here left. See what we can get to. Are there any former Twins you would love to see come back in any aspect? Coach, player, broadcast, front office? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what players have the chops to do what exactly. I think Kent Herbeck being involved more would be good, but at the same time, I don't know that he's a good video guy to be a hitting coach, or maybe he could be a good first base coach. I don't know, but I think he was part of that environment that really was positive for the Twins, and for when they were winning 20 some years ago, he was kind of the main guy right there. And he might be a guy that you could look into. And let's see here. We've got one last one from Al Schock, who works for the AP and does some stuff for the Twins. Is having the Royals go deep in the playoffs good or bad for baseball? I think, with the last 30 seconds here, having the Royals go deep in the playoffs is fantastic for baseball, because the major leagues can sell hope on the idea that no team is out. It doesn't matter how much you spend. If you cultivate the right environment and the right team, you can make the playoffs, and not only make the playoffs but get bounced in the first round, but make the playoffs and make a significant run. I think the Royals and Orioles going deep in the playoffs is fantastic for baseball. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Brandon Warne Podcast Project.